DawgNation, and welcome into DawgNation At Large. I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation insider Connor Riley, and boy, has it been a crazy week for college football.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yeah, typically when we do accountability checks, it's at the end of the show. We're holding everyone accountable, but at this point, we had to make Connor answer for his crimes. Let's go back to the beginning of August and see Connor make his pick for the national champion.
But I have the Penn State Nittany Lions winning the national title this year, and a pick that will surely not come to fruition.
But the Penn State, really? Are you going to fall for that propaganda?
They've got a very easy schedule. They get Oregon at home. They have to go to Ohio State. I think they're going to split those games. They're going to go 11-1. I think they're going to win the Big Ten title this year, and I think they're going to find a way. I don't feel great about it, but I don't feel great about any team winning a national title this season.
The Penn State propaganda. I just thought that you were a little bit smarter than that.
Look, they return a lot. I know wide receiver is obviously their biggest question, but you look at the recent national champions. Ohio State brought back a lot. Michigan brought back a lot. 21 Georgia team brought back a ton as well. And that's still a recipe for success, and I think Penn State follows that closest this year.
They return a lot. They have an easy schedule.
I actually feel better about that, having literally said in a pick that will surely not come to fruition. I was proven to be right. So thank you for checking the accountability there on that video.
I do not buy into that at all, because if at that point in time you thought that Penn State wasn't going to win, then you should have picked someone else. I know that nobody could really be confident in their national champion at that time, but you had look at all of. I picked Ohio State, so at this point, yes,
you picked Georgia.
I thought I had Ohio State beating Georgia in the national championship.
No. You picked Georgia, and I asked you, do you feel good about Georgia winning a national title right now?
I thought I picked Ohio State. I'm pretty sure I picked Ohio State. Either way, the two teams that I picked to be in the national championship are still contenders at this point. The team that you picked doesn't even have a head coach.
I'm just saying, you picked Georgia, and I wouldn't feel too great about Georgia winning a national championship this year.
I actually, you know what, we're going to circle back to that here in just a moment. Listen, I thought we'd go ahead and get this out of the way early instead of just having to let it linger and linger and linger. So I thought I was doing you a favor by just going ahead and getting it out of the way now.
How thoughtful.
I know. I'm very thoughtful. All right. So we will circle back to, do I think that Georgia is capable of winning a national championship at some point? It's going to be one of the things that we talk about in today's episode of DawgNation At Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation At Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Riley and Kaylee Mansell.
I mean, he had to know it was coming, at least. We tried to do it in a shocking way, but I don't blame Connor for standing his ground right there. I mean, even now, in this moment, there's not a clear front runner to be the national champion at this point. So we'll keep moving along, and we will definitely continue to hold ourselves accountable as our playoff picks continue to rise and fall. But we've got more important things to get to. We are officially at the halfway point of the regular season. We're going to give our thoughts on where things stand with this 2025 team, what we got right, what we got wrong, and questions that can still be answered as time goes on. We'll also do our dog bite segment, where we're going to cover some players that are questionable when it comes to their injuries, who steps up in the place, and then we'll also talk about maybe at this point who could we see playing in the SEC championship game. Then we'll do our meme machine segment, where we'll do our favorite memes in college football. We'll follow that up with something I'm really excited for, which is our Mount Rushmore of sports greatest villains. And then we've got touchdown predictions, and for the second week in a row, I'm actually excited to get to that part of the show because it was really lackluster at the beginning of the season. But let's start with Georgia football. I mean, honestly, I feel like the identity of this team is more noticeable than it has been, just because we are at that halfway point. But I feel like at this point, and just going back and watching some of our shows from over the summer, I think it's safe to say that we were wrong in more aspects about who this team is than we were right, Connor.
I don't know. I feel pretty good about how I assessed this team and what we thought of them going into this season. To your point, Kaylee, I think this team knows who it is and knows what it can do, for better and for worse. We heard Kirby Smart speak about it on the offensive side of the ball this week, knowing they're not an explosive offense, I think, the way they had been in years past. And on the defensive side of the ball, They're just not capable of getting after the pass rush or getting after the opposing passer. What they are capable of is running the ball and stopping the run, and that shortens the game a little bit. And I think in certain instances, you've seen this team rise up in tight situations because they're leaning on their talent in that way. And so that's going to help them win a lot of games. It's also forcing them to play closer games. You saw that against Alabama, a game they lost. You saw it against Tennessee and Auburn, games Georgia was able to come back and win. With how this team has started and what their identity is, I think that's the biggest reason we've seen them play so many close games and why it has been still a slog to get to this point. Georgia is still 5-1 and still very much in its own, potential path to the college football playoff.
I also think it was just really hard over the summer to try and predict who this team was going to be with a new quarterback, so many talented guys leaving and a lot of new faces coming in. So maybe the expectation all along was no expectation. And even though I still feel like there are areas where this team can grow, I think that you said it best. It's all about running the ball and stopping the run. But for the purpose of this conversation, what we're going to do is we're going to do something that we each got right about this team, something that we got wrong, and something that we're still unsure of. I think let's just go ahead and start it off with the bad things. Let's start with what we got wrong. I'll start and I'll take accountability for this. When Cody and I did our preseason grading report card over the summer, my highest rated position on the defense was the cornerbacks. I gave them an A because you had Dalen Everett coming back, coming off of an absolute breakout season. Then Daniel Harris, DeMello Jones, Ellis Robinson. I just thought that there was so much more depth at that position. And the problem with them this far is that Daniel Harris might as well be on the side of a milk carton now because he is literally nowhere to be found. I thought that Ellis and DeMello would be further along at this point in the season. And I do understand and I give them credit for the fact that this group has been able to make a lot of second half adjustments. But at this point, I would say that they're definitely a first half liability and still seem to struggle with tackling. So I do feel like this is a group that has more room to grow, just like they've made those second half adjustments. But I definitely shouldn't have aimed that high on what this position group would be.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say if this group in particular plays better against Alabama, maybe they find a way to win that game. And look, part of that was schematic adjustments that Georgia did not make early in that game. I think you saw some positive things from this group a week ago on the road at Auburn. Yes, there were some penalties. Bella Jones had one. Dalen Everett, I believe, came away with two. But those Auburn receivers are pretty talented. And while Jackson Arnold is obviously limited as a quarterback, I think with how Georgia defended those guys and played them specifically in man-to-man coverage, I think does give you some comfort going forward. I think if you had told us in the offseason, Kaylee, that they were going to be playing both Ellis Robinson and DeMello Jones as much as they were, especially when you consider Dalen Everett dealing with an ankle injury, missed the start of the season, I think you'd probably be a little bit more forgiving about what this group was as the cornerback room. As you just know, again, Ellis Robinson getting thrown out there on the road at Tennessee, that's a pretty big ask for a first SEC start there. So it is a young room, and I think that showed up this year. And despite all those guys being really highly touted recruits, there is just a difference when it comes to SEC speed and SEC level wide receivers.
I don't think that at this point in time I'm ready to formulate like a specific opinion on them just yet. I'm going to wait till after the Ole Miss game because they have seen offenses that are similar to Ole Miss like Tennessee and Alabama, but you mentioned the Auburn wide receivers and how talented they are. They're going up against another wide receiver room that's got a ton of talent in Ole Miss this week. So this is not only a chance to show improvement from the cornerback room, but also too, it's not going to get any easier from here on out.
Right. It is a different set of pass catchers. And even, coming out of the break, Florida with Dallas Wilson, he looks to be one of the better receivers in the SEC already as a freshman. Mississippi State, big reason for their turnaround is the play of their wide receivers. So you're going to see some talented wide receivers moving forward. For me, and the thing that I was wrong about with this Georgia team, I was more curious about the run defense and how they were going to be in that regard. I did not expect the pass rush to be this kind of an issue. And to me, it is the biggest issue on this Georgia team to this point in time. We said last week, if it's not going to show up against Auburn, I don't really know that you can expect it to show up over the course of the season. Georgia had one sack, and it was a schemed up sack where C.J. Allen burst through at a perfectly timed blitz. Part of it, look, Georgia has always, I think, been conservative in how they go about playing rushing quarterbacks, and they want to try and force them to beat them from the pocket. They're going to try and do something similar with Trinidad Chambliss to this point. But I don't think anybody 6 games through the season had Georgia ranking last in the SEC in sacks. And it's just something that this is just not a strength of this team. Elamodozie, there were national media people pumping him up as a potential SEC Defensive Player of the Year. That is certainly not going to be the case. We haven't seen much of an interior push from guys like Kristen Miller, Jordan Hall, Elijah Griffin, still a freshman who has had some nice moments, but he is not a fully formed pass rusher just yet. And it's going to be interesting moving forward to see how Georgia goes about overcoming this lack of a pass rush. We know it's something that is an issue for them. And while they do play more mobile quarterbacks, look, DJ Lagway, Arch Manning, those guys are plenty talented, even if they haven't necessarily put it all together. Georgia's going to have to find a way to do a better job of impacting opposing passers, because that's another big reason why they struggled on the road at Tennessee and outright lost to Alabama, was because Joey Aguilar and Ty Simpson were able to sit back there and really pick apart the Georgia defense.
Yeah, I feel like if you just did a survey of 100 Georgia fans and asked them what they got wrong about this team, 90% of them would point to the pass rush. And this wasn't a particular group that I was super high on coming into the season. And yes, the sacks have been disappointing, but then you go back and look at some of the Kirby Smart teams from the past where their sacks have been midway through the season. Really, the number is not that different than what we've seen over the last couple of years. I think the real issue with this group is not the sack production, but there's just no pressure on the quarterback whatsoever, especially thinking back to that Alabama game, and something that I'm curious to see how it goes this week against Trinidad Chambers. So there's just no pressure whatsoever at all. The sacks, I would love to see them, but at the same time, I think the pressure is more important, and that's not something that this group is bringing at this point in time.
No, it's hand in hand. Pressures lead to sacks, and sacks obviously can be a little bit of a misleading statistic. But to your point, Kaylee, like, they're just not getting the pressures that they need to. And Ty Simpson, look, to his credit, and there's a reason he's a Heisman Trophy contender, his ability to get the ball out quickly and into the right spots is a big reason why Alabama has turned their season around. And you're not going to see that every week, but at the same point in time, this has been enough of a consistent issue for Georgia where they just don't have someone that can win one-on-one matchups. And so Georgia is having to scheme. They're having to take chances in the back end. And that's why you've seen some of the defensive lapses you've seen to this point in the year.
All right, so let's move on to something that we got right. My first one is Georgia Tech making the playoffs. Oh, sorry, no, different slide. Okay, here we go. It looks like they might. Okay, but sorry, that was the wrong set of notes. Okay, I feel like maybe the one thing that I hit on, and maybe this was just all the time I've been spending with Jeff Sentell on Before the Hedges, is the early impact of Juan Gaston. Like, even before all the fall camp hype, this was somebody that I figured could be an instant plug-and-play guy just because of the size and playing football at the high school level in the state of Georgia. I don't think I anticipated him to necessarily be a starter, but I knew that this is someone who could get in the rotation early just because a lot of guys left. Now, he hasn't been perfect, but we are watching him continue to improve and grow in real time. And I think it's really safe to say that between him and Dontrell Glover, that this is the future of Georgia's offensive line room. So I think that was the one thing that I got right was, I didn't expect him to be the starter, but I did expect him to make an impact early on. So that's the one thing that I can point to and say, okay, good job.
Yeah, the right side of the offensive line, what's interesting here with Gaston, and yes, had the great fall camp, but injuries, I think, have slowed him down from taking the developmental steps that he needs to. I mean, this just speaks to the injuries they've had to deal with. I don't think anybody said a word about Dontrell Glover during fall camp, and he's been the better of the two freshmen to this point. And the fact that Georgia's had to rely on two freshmen, I think, speaks to some of the issues that Georgia has had on the offensive line so far this year, and something that looks to still be an issue here. It's funny you mentioned Jeff Sentell, because I don't know if there was any media member out there that was pumping up Noah Thomas more this offseason, and that hasn't necessarily come to fruition. But one of the things generally I think I've been right about was the improved play of this wide receiver room. Zachariah Branch has been a huge impact addition to what Georgia has done. You saw that in the Auburn game where, yes, he only finishes with 57 yards, but go back and watch that touchdown drive in the second half for Georgia to really put away Auburn. They were funneling the football to him, and that's something Georgia just didn't have a season ago there. You see Colby Young making consistently impactful catches for this team downfield. London Humphreys, where would Georgia be without some of the clutch catches he's made this year? Obviously, the touchdown against Tennessee and that fourth down conversion he picked up last week against Auburn. And even someone like Dylan Bell, 2 touchdowns in that game against Kentucky. Nice little bounce back performance from him after he really struggled the season ago. I know we haven't seen everything we're going to see from Noah Thomas to this point in the year either. Obviously, Talon Taylor had a tough game against Alabama, but there's a lot to like about this wide receiver room. And I think it's fair to say this is the most improved position from Georgia year over year.
Well, let's not forget that the bar was set really low to begin with after last season. But honestly, I agree with what you said. And I even think to something that we do during the show every week, which is our touchdown predictions. And I feel like people are trying to stray away from wide receivers because it's never clear on which wide receiver is going to get a touchdown in the game. It's all been based on running backs. But that also just goes to show the amount of weapons that they have. And at any given time, it can be a wide receiver's moment to make the play. We saw London Humphreys against Tennessee. And then the Dylan Bell game really surprised me. You understand what you've got in Zachariah Branch, but there's just so many more options for Gunnar to throw the ball to. So even though the bar was set really low, I do feel like this wide receiver group is right on par with what we talked about in the offseason.
Yeah, and it's a room where you wonder, okay, if Talon Taylor comes back in the second half of the year, what steps do we see from him moving forward? Obviously, look, you heard Georgia and Kirby Smart this week talk about there's ways we can get Zachariah Branch the ball even more, and they think he's better than what he's already shown this year. And then you touch on Noah Thomas, who had the big catch last week against Auburn. And the big reason I think Noah hasn't had the season he's had is just because Colby Young has been that good and that impactful, and they've eaten into each other's snaps a little bit there. So as well as this group has played and as well as they've opened things up for Gunnar Stockton so far, I do think there's still another level for this group to get to.
All right, so let's talk about the one thing that we are still unsure of at this point. For me, it's absolutely the tight ends. I don't know if maybe they just have a different role this year because of the wide receiver talent that Georgia has. Where is Jaden Riddell? Neither Oscar Delp or Lawson Lucky have a touchdown this year. In fact, it's only Elias Williams. I know that Kirby said that teams are playing defense against them differently, but there's way too much talent in this tight end room to not get more production out of them. I mean, I think any team that you go against Georgia has the head-to-head advantage within that tight end room. So I don't know what the future of this looks like, but I feel like they have to find a way to get them involved in the second half of the season more.
And your question about the tight end room, I think leads into what I have questions about. And it's just, is this as good as Gunnar Stockton is? Because we're at the halfway point of the season now. He's made 7 career starts. Yes, he's obviously allowed to get better, and I think you're going to see him continue to do that. But is this the full form of Stockton and what he looks like? And if it is, I just think that's going to make Georgia's offense incredibly limited moving forward. Now, you did see some nice things, I think, last week at Auburn specifically, and I know this play got flagged because of the Cash Jones alleged blindside block. But when Gunnar was scrambling and how he uses his legs, he's got to do a better job of keeping his eyes downfield. That was a major issue for Georgia early in the season, and I think they left a lot of yards and points on the field because of that. So if he's able to improve as a passer, improve his accuracy, which isn't always something that's easy to do, I think that's a way that Georgia can level up and go to another level. I think he's got to get more comfortable attacking the middle of the field, because I think that's why you don't see the tight ends having necessarily the production that they have, because where they line up on the line of scrimmage, that's where they are. So they've got to do a better job of attacking the middle of the field with Gunnar, and he's got to do a better job of when he runs, keeping his eyes up, because if he's able to blend those two skills together, that's, I think, going to help his rushing ability all the more and make him an even more dangerous player for Georgia moving forward.
100%. And it's tricky because one thing that we've talked about is the lack of explosive plays for Georgia this season. Part of that because of the lack of downfield passing from Gunnar Stockton, which is crazy because we know he's capable of doing it. We saw it at the Tennessee game, but that seems to be the outlier in all of his performances. Really haven't seen that same version of Gunnar Stockton yet. And the thing is like Gunnar's been fine. Like I wouldn't point to him as the reason for some of these closer games that Georgia is playing. I would point that more towards the defense, but I'm with you. Like, is this the most that we're going to see out of Gunnar Stockton? Because if it is at this point, you just have to start accepting that this Georgia team maybe isn't a true national championship contender because Gunnar can't give them more than what he's had. But it's tricky at the same time because he's been fine. I just wouldn't say that he's been elite.
This Georgia team, I think, was built with the idea that it could win a championship if Gunnar Stockton was just fine. And I don't think that's the case with what we've seen so far this season. There are too many warts at other places on this roster. And if Georgia is going to go farther than they did a season ago, they're going to need Gunnar Stockton to level up over the second half of this season. You saw in 2021, I think they got fine quarterback play for most of that season. They won a national title. That next year in 2022, when the defense regressed a little bit, you saw Stetson Bennett develop as a passer and ultimately improve as a player. The question for Gunnar is he going to be able to do that over the second half of the year, or is he going to need another year in this system to try and make a similar leap? That's the big question for not just Gunnar in this Georgia offense, But I think really this Georgia team, I know we talk so much about quarterbacks and sometimes it's oversimplified, but in this case, because of him and the way that they have elected to build this team, I think it's important that Gunnar continue to show strides and make better plays over the course of the season.
So I think we already kind of answered my final question of, at this point in the season, is Georgia a real national championship contender? I think that we would both agree that the answer is no. But apart from Gunnar Stockton, is there anything that you think you could see from this Georgia team throughout this second half of the regular season that would change your mind?
I think if this offensive line gets healthy, there's a lot to like about what they can do there. And look, it's never going to be fully 100% unless you get that extended time off like you saw last year against Notre Dame. But if Monroe Freeling's able to gut it out, I think they know this year who their best 5 offensive linemen are and what that's ultimately going to look like. And if that group can stay healthy and come together, I think that's going to go a long way in helping this Georgia offense carry the Georgia defense a little bit. To this point in the season, Georgia has had 6 different starting offensive line combinations in 6 games. It has all been because of injury. If they're able to get some continuity there on that side of the ball, I think that's going to help this offense ascend to another level.
So I'm glad you bring that up because offensive tackle is one of the positions that we're going to talk about when we do our Dog Bites segment here in a moment. But first, we want to remind you that here on DawgNation At Large, we are so excited to partner with Zagoria Law Firm. And what makes Zagoria Law Firm so unique is that they are the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people who have been bitten by dogs as well as those who have been knocked down by dogs. That's right, dog fans. They are the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs. So if you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's dog, make sure to give them a call at 833-GA-DOG-BITE, that's DOGBITE, or visit ZagoriaLaw.com. And now we'll do Dog Bites. Mid-season brings mid-season injuries. I feel like more things are happening in practice than they are on the fields. Was really shocked to see Kyron Jones listed as out on the latest injury report, dealing with a foot injury that's going to keep him out indefinitely. Right now, he's 4th on the team in tackles. He had that fumble recovery last week. I mean, do we know much about the extent of his injury and moving forward, who steps up in his place?
I think it's interesting that they didn't announce that he was having surgery. They did that when Talon Taylor injured his, I believe, collarbone a few weeks ago before the Kentucky game. So maybe there's some hope that he comes back. But foot injuries are always pretty scary in terms of how long a guy could be out and dealing with them. With him out, and he was already, I think, the weak link in this Georgia secondary in terms of the way teams would try and attack Georgia. You're going to see more Ja'Cory Thomas. You're probably going to see more Adrian Maddox as well. I do wonder if Georgia tries to get creative. Maybe they play DeMello Jones there in the middle of the field and they move Janelle Aguero to safety, moving him from the star position. We've seen in certain dime packages them get all 3 of Ellis Robinson, DeMello Jones, and Dalen Everett on the field at cornerback. So it's next man up there in the secondary. I'm very interested in seeing just how they go about replacing Kyron Jones at this point in the year because it does seem like a long-term injury.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it feels like Ja'Cory Thomas would be the one to step immediately into that role, but I also thought that Ja'Cory Thomas would initially be the starter going into the season. That hasn't been the case, which makes me wonder, is Ja'Cory Thomas further behind than he should be, even though he's been with the Georgia program forever? So it feels like it should be Ja'Cory Thomas, but also too, I don't know how much they trust in him at this point to play in that starting role. So I agree with you. I could see them getting creative. Obviously we'll have an answer on Saturday, but definitely was really shocked to see Kyron Jones on that injury report. Now, one injury, I mean, we didn't really know it was an injury at first. Chauncey Bowens only had 4 carries on Saturday, and then come to find out maybe he had an injury going on behind the scenes. He was limited. Now, Georgia ended up being fine in the long run. Nate Frazier got a lot of snaps in that game. But do we know if he's going to be fully back, like ready, healthy for Ole Miss?
Not on the injury report, so that would seem to indicate things are trending in the right direction. He did things in practice this week, so they feel like he's at least trending in the right direction there. I will say this was your touchdown call for last week, and had he not scored, Kaylee, and then you found out that he had been dealing with a little bit of a calf injury, I feel like that would have just taken you to a new low when it comes to taking touchdown predictions.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of luck there benefiting Georgia, where one of his 4 carries does end up going for the touchdown there to tie the game against Auburn.
And I feel so bad, too, because I think I got after Chauncey Bowens. Either it was after game 1 or game 2 that he was not one of the guys I thought should be getting a big load of carries. But you know what? He has really proven to be a surprise for this room. Very consistent. So I know that Georgia's hoping to get him back to full speed soon. And he's somebody that's really going to benefit from the bye week that Georgia will have after Ole Miss. Let's talk about offensive tackle. First off, shout out to Monroe Freeling for playing through that entire game, knowing that he was hurt and then winning SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. I think that it just goes to show how tough he really is. Look, Bo Hewley, another player who I feel like is really tough. You can see that he's really trying, but this just isn't his overall position, and that shows in a lot of moments, I think. Just with this position group moving forward, with the injuries that they face, like, what is the expectation for offensive tackle?
Yeah, this is the healthiest they've probably been on that offensive line since the season opener. Ron Gaston and Ernest Green both given probable designations on the availability report this week. I would expect you see more likely Gaston than Green. I think they're going to want to make sure he is fully ready to go as he continues to deal with a back injury. Ernest Green was thought to be maybe even perhaps Georgia's best offensive lineman entering the season. He has played the same number of snaps in the second half of a football game this year as you and I have, Kaylee. And I think that just sort of speaks to the issue that they've had to deal with. And it speaks to really, I think, the effort that Monroe Freeling gave last week and why that was so important. Didn't play the first 9 snaps. Georgia punts on both of those possessions. He inserts into the game on the 3rd drive for Georgia, plays the rest of the way. Not listed on the availability report this week. We know he's still working through that ankle injury. But if he's able to get through this week healthy and clean, Georgia gets a much-needed bye week next week. And I think that could potentially really help this offensive line with what they might go out there and try to do.
So last week I did a radio appearance, and one of the questions that they asked me was, at this point in the season, could I confidently pick 2 teams that were going to play in the SEC championship game? And in that moment, that was like the hardest question that anybody has asked me ever, because at the moment you've only got 3 teams with no SEC loss. That's Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and then you've got 7 teams with 1 loss, including Georgia. I don't know if I would be confident in putting a guess in right now. I think it's one of those things that it's really going to come down to the wire, just like it did last season. But I feel like if I had to throw one in there right now, I might say that Texas A&M has a pretty favorable schedule. Their defense looks really good. Now, they do have room for a trap game, but that might be the one that I'm willing to put in the ring at this point in time.
I will have the courage to actually make an SEC championship game prediction, and I'm sure this will come up on availability check later, but looking at the schedules and the way things are done, I am actually going to pick Alabama and Ole Miss to get to the SEC championship game. Neither has a loss on their schedule from an SEC point of view at this point in time. I think that's very important to note. Ole Miss is purely based on schedule. I don't believe they're one of the 2 best teams in the SEC, but they're tough games left. They are at Georgia this week. They are at Oklahoma next week. I believe they're going to split those 2 games, and if they do that, I do believe that the way their schedule sets up in October, Florida is on there, and they might be firing Billy Napier this weekend. Mississippi State is on there, and I know that's a rivalry game. Things can get weird. This is a very favorable schedule for Ole Miss. They also get South Carolina, which is a bit of a mess. I think that's going to help them there. With Alabama, and look, they've still got a tough schedule ahead. They've got Oklahoma. They've got Tennessee this weekend. They've got LSU, but all those games comes at home, and that road trip to Auburn at the end of the season, who knows where they're going to be at that point in time. So Alabama, while I haven't loved everything I've seen from them, I do think their schedule sets up favorably for them.
So I think we can tie in our other game that we're excited to watch with this SEC championship game and who are the teams that are going to play, because I am going to take Tennessee and Alabama just because that will cause some separation in the SEC rankings. I think at this point in time, Alabama looks like the most complete and polished team in the SEC, but this is a big rivalry game. Weird things happen. We know Tennessee got one last year. I do think that Alabama has more talent, but it will be interesting to see the shootout game, shot for shot. Who knows, maybe something crazy happens, but I'm glad that this game will cause some separation within those SEC rankings, making the vision more clear for who could potentially be in this game.
Yeah, it hasn't exactly been a banner season for Alabama, at least in terms of where they used to be, but this is a huge game for them. If they get through this 4-game stretch, we're coming out of their bye. They were home again. They were at Georgia, home against Vanderbilt, at at Missouri, and then home against Tennessee. You get through those 4 games with 4 wins. That's pretty impressive and speaks to what this team was able to do in finding ways to win. I'm staying in the SEC for my most interesting game. However, it is on the exact other end of the standings. It's Florida-Mississippi State. I have no idea what this Florida team is going to look like on Saturday. A lot of rumors that Billy Napier, even with a win on Saturday, could be let go. I am so curious in terms of seeing what this team looks like and how they go out and play, because this Mississippi State team they're playing, and while they're playing them at home, yes, Mississippi State had last week off, and I don't put nothing into that. So I think that this game is going to be so fascinating, and I think if there's a world where Mississippi State gets up early, jumps out early on Florida, things could get very, very nasty for Billy Napier down there in Gainesville.
I think that's like the biggest difference between the SEC and a lot of other Power 4 conferences, is that even the teams that are in the bottom tier, the games are always so fascinating and there's no telling what could happen or the outcome that it's going to have on somebody's job like Billy Napier, or how that's going to impact the rest of the season. So I think that's the biggest difference, is even these bottom tier teams, the matchups are always interesting, and I think that this is a good example of that. All right, so Georgia and Georgia Tech, I mean, it's getting closer and closer and closer now that we're at the midway point. I mean, we are rounding second base, almost there. And there are tickets on sale at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.com/events. It's the Atlanta Gridiron Classic for clean old-fashioned hate. It's on a Friday, right after Thanksgiving, and I know that Georgia fans are going to want to pack out that stadium because technically Georgia Tech is the home team, but when we think about Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Georgia, they really do have that home field advantage there. So if you want to come see DawgNation, I know that we'll do something there as well. So get your tickets now at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.com/events. All right, now we will get into Meme Machine.
Who's that going down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's the Meme Machine and Randy Black. It's the Meme Machine and Randy Black.
Hi, Cody. Oh.
I'm clapping for
Hello,
Cody.
everybody.
Yes.
He's doing
Connor,
a great
I
job.
appreciate
Claps
you.
for Cody.
Yeah.
That is good stuff right there. That may have something to do with my meme later on.
Yeah.
I do want to get to something real quick right off the top here. We just need to clear some stuff up that's happened in the show already today. This is Kaylee's bracket.
Oh,
by the
no.
way. Oh, here we go. We're going to do a accountability check. It is the dog. She's still a believer. So despite how she feels midway through the season, we will come back to that, I'm sure, at a later date.
Look, I am known for a lot of things having a good memory. Not really one of them. So I apologize. I take accountability for that. But again, my two teams still technically in contention. So we had an all-time meme machine last week. It's going to be really hard to top. I'm going to go first this week, and I'm just going to let you guys know my meme is pretty subpar because most of the tweets that I liked throughout the course of the week were either Auburn hate tweets or could not be shown on this show where maybe there are children watching. So we're just going to go a happy Halloween tweet. This comes from Ross Martin. I mean, it's Bill Belichick and his girlfriend Jordan. People are so quick with it. And it's crazy too because I mean, yeah, you can tell that's Bill Belichick, but that hair literally looks exactly like Jordan Hudson. I'm pretty sure I've seen her in that exact same outfit. So happy Halloween. The Bill Belichick jokes, they just never stop. And I mean, honestly, this is incredible.
Are they leaving these boots out in the rain like all the time? Sorry, is
Those
that
look
my...
nice? They're nice boots.
Yeah.
Honestly, what happened is I bet that the wife or the daughter within that house ordered those and they were not comfortable at all. And she's like, let's just stick them on skeleton Jordan Hudson out there, you know, woman canon experience. All right, Cody, take it away.
We saw Connor. It is the thing that's going around the internet this week, the clapping. So this one comes from Maddie Freeze. You may recognize that last name. It is Hugh Freeze's daughter, who says, me clapping this morning in church when the pastor makes a good point, and giving us the old timeout clap, which was very popular. I also saw folks clapping at the Athens half marathon, I think, last week. They were doing the T-clap. It is a new thing for Georgia fans, but I'm glad Maddie Freeze, I don't think her dad was having as much fun with it, but at least she can have a little joke. I
don't think that any Auburn fan was having that much fun with it.
No, and I think that's what made it all the more entertaining to the Georgia fans out there that enjoyed that. I went away from the world of college football this week for my meme of the week, but digging in the sports internet, the Boston Celtics assistant coaches, filled with a number of high-level former college basketball players, took on the Boston Celtics media in a 12-minute game. And the Celtics assistant
12.
coaches outscored the media 57-4 in a 12-minute game. I'm sure there are a lot of coaches around the country that would love to do this to their local media. No doubt. I think the Georgia coaches would love to sometimes put the Georgia media in their place, though I don't think we're going to play a football game anytime soon. But this got a lot of run because that was an absolute bloodbath by the Celtics coaching staff.
Wait, that's so fun, though. I think Atlanta United does something similar to that,
yes,
right?
I've played in the Atlanta United game before. The one thing you realize is, like, you haven't played sports in a long time. If there's a different physically fitness. And they had the Atlanta United coaches were playing with us, and, like, they can kick the ball really, really hard. So, yeah, I'm sure Kirby Smart would love to be in a Oklahoma drill with us at some point.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you had basketball. I'm going to tie that in with something that we're going to do here in a moment on DawgNation at Large. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back.
This is the Georgia football family answering the call for Coach Mark Richt.
Coach Rick's just a pillar in the community, and he's meant so much to me in my career.
It's the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl, helping raise money to fight Parkinson's and Crohn's.
It's been amazing how much fun everybody has.
Coach Kirby Smart, his players, and UGA legends all coming together.
If Coach Rick was doing this in the Middle East, I'd be there.
You can help by donating at ricksdogbowl.com.
All the proceeds for this event will go to the Isaacson Center for Neurological Disease Research.
And you can watch it on October 22nd at 6:15.
DawgNation is going to stream the event live.
It's the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl.
Tune into it, watch it, but support it. Donate.
Take a bite out of Parkinson's and Crohn's.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do, and this was inspired by multiple things. First off, the Kirby timeout clap. I mean, Kirby quickly became one of the biggest villains of the weekend in college football, which is crazy because I remember everybody rooting for them in that 2021 national championship because everybody just wanted to see Alabama fall. So Georgia was like the feel-good story. Now it feels like Georgia football has become one of the villains to everybody else outside of DawgNation. And also there's a show at this point in time that Connor and I are both watching, and there's no show or show universe that creates better villains than The Boys and Gen V, which we're watching at the moment. So that's what inspired this segment that we're going to do, which is our Mount Rushmore of greatest sports villains. I like that it's spooky too, like just in time for Halloween. Like that was really good.
We need some sports. I was trying to find sports villain music. That's what we got.
No, that was good. So me, Connor, and Cody are all gonna go. I say we just take our picks one by one. I'm gonna go ahead and go first because I do think that both Connor and Cody know exactly where I'm going with my pick. Growing up, living with my dad, we watched a lot of 30 for 30s in my time, and there was no 30 for 30 that impacted me like the Detroit Bad Boy Pistons did. It changed the person that I am today. It made me change the way that I viewed villains in sports as a whole. The timing of the team, post Larry and Magic, right on the brink of Michael Jordan. Dennis Rodman, Isaiah Thomas. I mean, to me, that is the ultimate sports villain. And like I said, it changed the basketball player that I was. I watched it right before my senior year of high school, and I wasn't a great player. I could just shoot threes and play defense, and that made me embrace the villain role. So I definitely took on the Bad Boy Pistons persona. And even though I wasn't here to experience that, I have always said that I am historically a Detroit Pistons fan. So for me, there is no better villain in all of sports than the Bad Boy Pistons because literally every single person hated them. So that's my number one pick. It was the obvious choice. I wanted to go ahead and get it out of the way, so we can go ahead and give it to Connor for his first one.
Yeah, my first pick is the 1990s New York Yankees. Yes, they won 4 World Series in that time. Derek Jeter, the face of just being merely good, but somehow being lauded to an otherworldly shortstop, even though he never had one discernibly great skill. The real reason they're the villains, in addition to winning all the time, spending more money than everyone else, representing the worst, I think, of baseball tendencies like you see the Dodgers do now. Back in those days, we used to make proper sports movies, and the Yankees were always the perfect villain, the perfect contrast for plucky underdogs to go up against. So I think the 1990s New York Yankees are among the most despised sports villains in recent memory. And so with that, they are my first pick.
Broke our Braves' hearts. I appreciate that one. And Kaylee, you definitely are the Bill Lambier of our show.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice of you
derogatory.
to say.
That's nicer.
So
if my first villain, we're going to do a Georgia Bulldog show on Dog Nation without mentioning the number one. That is Steve Spurrier. He will not only beat your team and run up the score, he will then talk smack about you after the game. Growing up, there's nobody who's made those trips down to Jacksonville more miserable than Mr. Steve Spurrier, the old ball coach. Got to be number one sports villain for me.
You better hope Mike doesn't watch this show. He's coming for you.
We've had Steve Spurrier on. Steve Spurrier, by the way, I think has blocked me on Twitter. Maybe still has me blocked on Twitter. But yeah, he's been on the beat for us, and I've had to not be on that interview.
You could definitely have Mike tell him to unblock you if that's something that you would even want.
Nah, I think I'm okay. I think that's a point of pride.
Okay, for my second pick, I'm gonna stay in the realm of baseball like Connor did, and this one has the Atlanta tie. I think it's absolutely John Rocker. Mostly self-explanatory. Did give us Kenny Powers, which is great. But I had my own personal experience with John Rocker when I was working as a waitress. And I remember that he came in, asked if he could still smoke inside the bar, which I told him, no, we don't allow that anymore. I go about and do my business, and then I come back like 5 minutes later, and John Rocker is literally underneath one of the tables in the back of the bar, smoking a cigarette under the table. I was like, you can't do that. I just told you that. He was like, no, like, it's fine. Like, you know who I am. And then he tipped me like $3 on a really big bill. So I have my own ties with John Rocker. Also, he was a horrible watch on Survivor. I get it, City of Atlanta, but I mean, individual John Rocker. I mean, they made a show about how awful he was. So give me John Rocker with my number 2
He's a
pick.
large man to be hiding under a table.
I mean, seriously, seeing a grown man do that, like, that's something I will never forget.
All right, Connor.
This next pick for me might be surprising to some, but I am going to pick Tom Brady as my Mount Rushmore of sports villain. Nobody has done more at the quarterback position. Nobody has won more. Sure, he was not the most talented. Sure, he maybe tried to deflate some footballs at the time. That had absolutely no bearing or impact on how he played. I think that was a largely construed story by the NFL to make up an attempt for Spygate, which happened in 2007, a Bill Belichick orchestrated cheating scandal. But the reason Brady is so good is because anyone who watched that Super Bowl 51, I believe, between the Falcons and Patriots, the Falcons left the door open, and there was Tom Brady, a.k.a. Michael Myers, walking back through it. And time again, they tried to get rid of him. Nobody had played the sport longer than he did, playing till age 45, playing as well as he did well into his late 40s. He's an easy target. He's an easy punching bag. I think a lot of those come because people were so tired of seeing him win all the time. And he has beaten everybody from Peyton Manning to Patrick Mahomes. There will never be another quarterback that accomplishes as much as Brady. And I think that frustrates so many.
City of Atlanta definitely knows all about that. I'm going to stick with baseball for mine. My number 2 sports villain. In this city, we love Hank Aaron. And for that reason, you've got to make the villain out of Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds, a guy who broke Hank Aaron's record, but did it with so much substance in his body, and he's clearly changed his body over the years. I've been to Cooperstown, New York, and you can go to the Baseball Hall of Fame and see the baseball with the branded asterisks right on top of it. That's how a lot of Braves fans still feel. So Barry Bonds definitely up there for me on a sports villain.
My next one is not a person as much as it is a thing, and I don't think that my attention was brought to it until pretty recently. So with my number 3 pick, I don't even know how you would put this on the Mount Rushmore. Give me the turf at MetLife Stadium. Malik Neighbors, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Phillips, Sterling Shepard, Kyle Fuller, Jabril Peppers, Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas. I mean, no ACL stands a chance against MetLife Stadium turf. It's seriously, they've got to do something about that because a lot of the careers that have been delayed have been because of that. And seriously, at some point you have to start looking at it as the problem. And I feel like it's changed the outcome of what should be, maybe a fantasy win for somebody or just a great season for one of the players on the field. So I'm going an object for one of my villains, but clearly the pattern is there.
So that's like the Teddy Roosevelt of yours is the grass. And I think the grass at Neyland Stadium will have an argument.
It deserves mention as well. Yeah,
yes,
real ones now.
Cannot pass
I'm going to go to college football here. I'm going to take a page out of Cody's book. I'm going to take a former Florida coach as a villain, but someone who I think across the sport is much more despised. That would be one Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
And his time at Florida was cut short due to heart problems. Either they were physical, mental problems, or the fact that he was just sort of faking it to get out of a team that he had poorly constructed. And that Florida program hasn't been the same since he left. So in some ways, maybe Georgia fans are glad to have had Urban Meyer in their existence for a few brief years. But the way he tried to cut corners at Ohio State, and yes, he won 3 national titles that bears mentioning. But just I think the way that he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, his time with the Jacksonville Jaguars was an absolute disgrace. And the fact that he still gets to sit up there, get a nice paycheck from Fox and talk about college football, even though I think he helped make this game worse in some ways because of what he has done. I think Urban Meyer, an easy sports villain, not just for Georgia, but for a lot of fans out there.
The way you were building that up, you were like, I'm going to go with another Florida coach. I was thinking, does he love sharks? Is this going to be Jim McElwain? But it was not, so that's good news. Is it my turn now?
Yeah. It is your turn.
Number 3 for me. This one, we'll stick with baseball. It's a guy who has made Braves fans just love to boo. It's just a fun guy to boo, and that's Bryce Harper. He still hadn't have a ring, but he's had the moments with the Nationals and the Phillies against the Braves. He had the stare down a couple years ago. I think Braves fans, having been on the field and interacted with Bryce Harper, he actually doesn't seem like that bad of a dude, but if you're a Braves fan, he is fun to hate, and that's what I love about a sports villain who is just fun. You kind of almost have to respect him like Spurrier, but he's fun to hate, and I would say Bryce Harper right up there for me.
Yeah, I also went with a college football sort of a realm for mine. I had thought about someone like a Johnny Manziel or a Connor Stallions, but I'm going to go pretty broad with my answer, and that's going to be anything in college sports that ends with the word committee, whether that's the NCAA infractions committee, the college football selection committee, where is the accountability for the people that hold the power in college football? Michigan's punishment was soft. I got worse punishment for having B's on my report card in my household. And also, too, I feel like Georgia was a victim of the college football playoff selection committee when they left them out in 2023. I know that there can be arguments that were made for why they should be left out, but I do think if they were in that year, they would have won. And then also, in case you guys haven't noticed, outfit change, my Michigan Fab 5 shirt. I don't view them as one of the villains in college sports because I think that the way the infractions committee handled their punishment in turn made them the villain. So they're not the villain to me, but anything that ends in the word committee, you can't trust anything or any sort of punishment that they're going to put out, especially the playoff committee. This is a bunch of people who we know don't watch a lot of college football. So where's the accountability for the people that hold all the power?
You got grass and a committee.
I'm being creative.
Interesting picks there from Miss Mansell. I have a couple of outside looking ins. The city of Philadelphia as a whole, I think anyone down here can appreciate just how they always seem to come up short. Tough couple of weeks there for Philadelphia sports fans between the Eagles disintegrating before our eyes, Penn State, what happened there, and the Phillies blowing their game against the Dodgers. But I am actually going to go with another Florida coach who I think Florida fans might hate more than Georgia fans, but Brandon Adams, our very own, got plenty of mileage out of this man. That would be one Dan Mullen, a coach who is, by all accounts, a good football coach, but I think doesn't understand what it takes to be successful in the SEC at the highest level. It's why I think Florida was so quick, despite the success that he had, ran him out of there. And you see, I think, especially in juxtaposition to Kirby Smart, who eats, sleeps, and breathes being elite at an elite level. I think Mullen was a perfect foil for Kirby, and that is why Mullen is now the head coach at UNLV after spending some time in TV on the run in Vegas trying to rebuild his life there. Whereas Kirby Smart still getting it done at Georgia, still winning national titles, and still dominating Florida just like he did when Mullen was the head coach there.
I think our good friend Eddie, who's the fourth face on the Mount Rushmore, would agree with you. That was his number 1 overall pick.
Very good. I love it. Good Eddie appearance on the show. All right, so I thought about the one outside looking in for me was Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K. You talk about the Yankees are easy to hate. Duke, definitely easy to hate. What reminds me, though, I was talking to somebody this week. I feel like Kirby Smart has now become Coach K. He was working the refs that whole game, and he's getting calls because he's Kirby Smart. So I think he's kind of become that. So that was maybe too close for me. But also from that Auburn game, what struck me, I don't know if you guys could see it from the press box, but as you're on the field and you're watching the in-game stuff that they're putting on, they did a whole segment celebrating Nick Fairley. and not it's celebrating Nick Fairley for personal fouls he committed on, making illegal plays against Georgia. They celebrated. They put a whole little thing together for him, and they made him look like he was a hero. But no, the dude's a dirty player, and yet you're celebrating him. Nick Fairley's going to be up there, especially for Dog fans, in a post-Auburn week. It was amazing to me that Auburn, Georgia would feel some shame, right, about we were not going to put this up there. But everybody, that was one of the things they could brag on at Auburn was that, we had personal fouls against the Dogs.
Yeah, I feel like also, too, when their time is over, a lot of people are going to view Hugh Freeze to be a villain just because of some of the things that he did in his career. But also, too, I feel like a lot of teams and people view Lane Kiffin to be a villain in a sort of a way as well. So Georgia facing two villainous coaches, maybe now having one of their own. If you go on the internet, search Kirby Smart, some not nice things that have been said about him over the course of the last week. Okay, so we're going to do touchdown predictions here in a moment, but I want to give a shout out to both Connor and Cody, who are going to be a part of my DawgNation Game Day show on Saturday. It's going to start at 1:30. You can watch on any DawgNation platform. If you're in Athens, you can stop by the downtown Jittery Joe's location where we'll be. Come say hi. Come talk some Georgia football with me. But like I said, it's going to feature Connor, Cody. We'll also hear from Jeff Sentell and Rodrigo Blankenship. If you want to get a notification when we go live, then just go to our DawgNation YouTube page, and then you can hit the subscribe button, and right next to it, there's that little bell. That way you'll get that notification, and I hope that you'll join us for DawgNation Game Day on Saturday. Touchdown prediction time. This has bonded Connor and I in a strange way in the press box because we're kind of rooting against each other until we both get one. And now at this point, Cody, you are the villain in our lives because you are number one. So we're really just trying to get up on your level.
This is a gross misrepresentation. I'm rooting for all of us to get our touchdown predictions correctly. The tide raises all boats. And when Gunnar Stockton scored his his game-winning touchdown, game-sealing touchdown last week, I look over at Kaylee. She's got that stank face on. She knew exactly what had just happened and that I had evened her up, tied at 2 now, still trailing Cody. But I was a little hurt that Kaylee was like, no, I didn't want Gunnar Stockton to score there. Not because Gunnar Stockton's score covered the spread, which hurt me in another one of our shows, but just because she wanted me to be in last. I thought we were all rooting for each other and rooting for our picks, but evidently that is not the case.
I don't remember this.
I remember it vividly.
It was really
you don't forget a stank face like that.
All right, so where we stay now, Cody's still in the lead with 3. Me and Connor are closing in on that lead. We've got 2. Okay, so we're going to make our picks. This week it's going to go Connor, Cody, and then me. I think that's it. Yeah, but just a reminder, this is the halfway point in the season. So this is when you can really start using some of the ones that you took earlier in the year. Just decide how you want to do that. So, Connor, you have the first pick for touchdown predictions.
A lot of ways I can go. I think about Chauncey Bowens because of the way that Ole Miss struggles to stop the run, but I am a little hesitant after what we saw last week. I can't pick Nate Frazier again because when I picked him, he got benched for fumbling. So I'm going to go with a wide receiver. There's a wide receiver I have not yet taken this season. Give me Colby Young to get in the touchdown at home at Sanford Stadium. I think he's a guy, his size is going to make a real impact. That is a guy Gunnar doesn't mind throwing the ball to, especially deep. And while Noah Thomas, Kaylee picked him earlier in the year, and he got very, very close. I think Kaylee would have gotten pretty frustrated if he had scored there too and robbed Chauncey Bowens of his touchdown. I think Colby is a guy that can make a difference and make a big impact this week. So for the first time this year, I'm going to pick Colby Young.
I think that's a fair pick. Cody?
Yeah, I've actually had a bit of a slow go here the last few weeks, so I need to get back on track. I'm going to go Nate Frazier and hope number 3 finds the end zone this week and gets me back on track.
Wow, guys, you've made my decision really tough. And because at this point, I'm like, do I just go for the sure thing and then try to secure that now, or am I using it too soon? I think I am going to repeat this week. For the second time this year, because I do feel like maybe there's some other players we see emerge. Just because Ole Miss has a terrible run defense, I feel like I have to take a running back in this instance. So I'm going to go Josh McCray for the second time this year. That just feels safe. I want to ensure some points on the board. Then after that, I can answer for my crimes. But let's just go ahead and keep it going because this is, I think, the second week in a row I've had one. So
we can use them a maximum of 3. Is that right?
No, 2.
Correct.
2?
I thought it was 2. Maybe it's 3. Oh, I don't know.
Hey,
like I said, I have no short-term memory, guys. There's a lot going on up here.
It's 3, says a producer.
It's 3, yeah.
I feel like maybe we should have started with 2.
No, because we want to get you want to get points on the board, and so like 2 just makes it too restrictive.
Okay.
Like last year, whoever won got 5 correct, and I want to try and get higher than that this season.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Come on,
Fine.
us.
All right, that's fine. Okay, let's do that. I'm gonna take Josh McCray. Connor's got Colby Young. Cody's got Nate Frazier. All right, that works.
Take us home.
Okay, I will. Connor, what'd you learn today?
Kaylee has short-term and potentially long-term
So
memory
bad.
issues.
What's crazy too is like every person in my family will tell you that I had a dazzling memory growing up. Like I could take my mom and dad's yearbooks from high school and I could like memorize every single person. I don't know what happened over that time. It's just gotten progressively worse, but you know what? You got to make do with what you've got. Some things maybe I just have like selective memory where I choose to try and forget it. Maybe I'm guilty of that, but yeah, there's no denying that. All right, this is a big one. Now, I just quick programming note: we will not have a show next Thursday for the bye week, but make sure you join us for Dog Bowl, which is going to take place on Wednesday. I'm really excited. Curious to see if Connor eats an entire certain sauce just by the container again. But make sure you join us for that. No show. We will be back for Florida week. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us, and we'll see you right back here in 2 weeks on DawgNation At Large.